Hey guys, what's going on? Today I got a video for you going over the deck that got me first day infinite in this season of Snap, and it is highlighting the new card to the game, Sebastian Shaw. Surfing with Sebastian is the deck, and it highlights Silver Surfer and Sebastian Shaw, as well as going with greedier 3 costs with Maximus and Gladiator to give you initiative to win lanes. In over 100 games played with this deck, I had a 67% win percentage and would continue to steal cubes from people left and right with this greedier variant of the Surfer deck. So now we're going to break down this deck into its 2 parts, the must-haves and the cards that are your more audible slots that you can mix and match and get whatever you want in there to fight against what you've been playing against in the ladder. To start off in the must-haves, we have Nova, and he is kind of packaged with Killmonger. It provides the capability to buff your Sebastian 1 time, as well as giving you the ability with Killmonger to kill off opposing 1-drops and Nebula and Sunspots if they aren't protected with armor, as well as potentially proccing a Nova earlier for a mirror matchup and giving them a bit of a disadvantage, so you can be more aggressive with your Killmonger if you're running into a lot of 1-drops, maybe bounce decks. And obviously, this being a Surfer deck, you need Silver Surfer in there. There's no card like him. We're playing a ton of 3-drops in this deck because the power that Surfer can produce on turn 6 or earlier if you need to is just irreplaceable in this deck list. And Sebastian Shaw is also obviously in this deck. He is the newest card in the game, and him stacking power just increases his potency on the board significantly. You can throw him into a storm location and just buff him up and let him eat up if you don't have Brood. So there's lots of options you can have with Sebastian Shaw in a Surfer list. I personally like to have Storm in every single Surfer list that I'm doing. She's just too good at locking down a lane potentially. You can Storm on turn 3 into a Brood. You can Storm into a Sebastian, and you'll see momentarily in my audible section that you can Storm into a Juggernaut. There's multiple options you can do depending on when you play Storm, and it can lead you to many passive victory. Brood is just super important in any Surfer list. It can just turn into a 3 cost, 12 power, which is just insane. And like I said earlier, it wins you lockdown lanes pretty significantly, or if there's, say, a destroy location, you can still get into that location without having to worry about storming it per se. And Maximus and Gladiator, I'm going to tie together here. They're both must-includes in this deck, must-haves in this deck, because the power they produce is just crazy. 3/7 is a crazy stat line. Obviously, they each have their own downfall, so you want to play them more strategically. Maximus, I really don't like to play until turn 6, turn 5 if I really have to. Gladiator, you can get away with throwing out earlier, depending on the deck you're playing against. You got to recognize if you're playing a destroy deck, you probably don't want to play Gladiator early, but they produce a lot of power. They can win you initiative in the lane, which is very important for your Juggernaut plays or getting off your Silver Surfers and things before somebody's going to Eliath you, or you triggering Killmonger before your opponent in a mirror match. And finally, Sarah. She's a staple of Surfer lists. She's you play her on turn 5, and then all of a sudden, all these 3-drops you have in your hand, you can play 3 of them on turn 6, which is just an incredible swing. You can throw out, if people aren't expecting, you can throw out 14 power with just Maximus and Gladiator alone. You can throw out a Brood and then a Monger and a Surfer. There's many routes you can use after you've gone and played Sarah on turn 5. She is extremely important to this deck and will win you many cubes. And moving on to our flex cards, you'll see we have 4 here. 1 is not in the official deck list, Forge. I used him quite a bit, but that's why he's a flex card. I don't think he's necessarily the best, but he works extremely well with Sebastian or onto Brood or Gladiator, so depending on what you're running into, Forge might be a better option for you in some situation. Shadow King is a good option for you in the mirror matchup. He can get rid of a Sebastian Shaw that's buffed up. He's also good against any Shuri decks you're running into, but they were starting to thin out later in the ladder, so you could easily replace him with Forge in a lot of situations. Jeff is just extremely valuable in almost every single deck at this point. He is 2 cost, you can throw him anywhere. He's going to get a buff from your Nova if you proc it. He's just a valuable card. You can throw him in, and if he's not doing what you want, you can easily flex him out for one of these cards. And finally, Juggernaut is extremely valuable. There's not a lot of movement capabilities in the game right now, and he is an extremely valuable card in this deck because we are fighting for priority all the time with our larger 3 costs. So he can usually have initiative for you and knock people out of a storm lane, and surprise somebody on turn 6 and just win you a lane with only 2 cards. And honestly, in the flex position, you could throw in almost any of the 3 drops you can think of, and it would probably work pretty well in this Surfer deck. I've started to play around with Polaris. She's pretty strong as well. Hey guys, if you made it this far into the video and you like this deck a lot and it's helping you out, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, please. It helps me out a lot. But that being said, let's get into some of the gameplay of me absolutely dominating people and just climbing the ranks to infinite in less than 24 hours. And first up here, we got Bear the Silent. And we don't have the best opening hand, but having Silver Surfer in your opening hand is never a bad thing. These locations are not ideal for us, but... And we drew Storm, and usually Storm on turn 3 is the best play, but that really doesn't get Hotel Inferno involved that much, so I'm going to just brood onto that location to try to get one good destroy off from his deck. And we destroyed his Bishop, which is not really that great, so we're just going to storm that location and try to lock it down even more for him. It's unlikely to play, maybe the brood is scaring him away from it. Ooh, and his Iceman hits our Surfer with a Sarah in hand. That's not great. But we're still going to go with the gameplay of Sarah here and trying to win the game with a big combo on turn 6. And he go aheads and Iron Man's in the left lane. So it's going to leave us open with a bunch of power potentially here with the Maximus and Gladiator. And I think Sebastian Shaw, just stacking power middle location, is more valuable than trying to Surfer here because there is no benefit to our right lane. And just like that, an easy victory. And moving on here, we got Mateus. It's a Necrotia start, which is not great, but we're just going to throw Nova down in the middle lane here. Ooh, Nexus middle is interesting with this deck. We're going to go ahead and not do anything here. And Okoye, he's probably playing some Sebastian list, I'd imagine. We're going to go ahead and take advantage of the Noor Dimension and Nakia and boost up our entire hand here. Works well with Brood. He goes ahead and Jeffs to get his Noor Dimension hit. We're just going to go ahead and Brood the Nexus because I'm going to early Killmonger and get more power on turn 6 onto the Nexus. Always make sure to remember to take advantage of the Noor Dimension, and if you can get extra mana, it's just very beneficial. Don't overcommit though to your board. So we're gonna go ahead and Killmonger here because we need to proc the extra space in the Nexus for us, and we're also gonna go ahead and storm away the Noor Dimension this way. They can't get a bonus at 1 cost. And we got the advantage of proccing his Nova early, so it gets less potential power onto the board for him. And look at that, he did Killmonger there, so it worked out for us. And we're gonna go ahead and just get as much power onto the Nexus as we can here, so we're gonna Maximus, and we'll throw Silver Surfer down, and that should likely be enough power to win us the game. I'll strategically throw Shadow Surfer down into the right lane here to try to debuff, and just in case. And he's Sebastian Shaw's and Surfer's in the middle. That's a strong play, but that's not going to be enough. And our debuff in the right lane really worked out for us there, and that is a victory. And moving on here, we got Elorkai. Muir Island is not a great first location for Nova, so we're just going to throw him into the middle lane. And Triskelion throws a bunch of junk into our hand, so we're just going to throw down Nightcrawler onto Muir Island and just get a little buff from him. And Storm on turn 3, I'm going to take away the advantage that Muir Island was giving him at this point. Luckily, Jean Grey looks really well for us here in our Juggernaut. We know he's playing here, and it's only a Kitty Pryde, so it didn't really matter in the end. Turn 5 in the Surfer list, what do? You play Sarah if she's in her hand, and we go ahead and throw down Vibranium Mines, because I don't really care what we draw here. We have a pretty strong hand. She-Hulk is a strong play in the middle lane, but there's no way he can be anticipating a Shayna for us to win the left lane, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and put down our 2 strongest cards into the right lane. And he only gets Giganto back in the middle lane, and that is not enough. That is another victory for us. This deck is just absolutely piecing people up. And finally in today's video, we got K-Mat. Can't play on the first location, so we're just going to throw Nova middle here. And the second location is Clintar, which is not great for us. We're going to lose that Nova probably, and we got nothing to do here. Oh, and he armors on top of it, so he really doesn't want us to have any chance to park that Nova. I'm just going to throw Sebastian Shaw and Stark Tower because that's just going to have good value. And on this turn, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to storm away and probably win the location on the right with Shaw there already. And guess what? It's a Surfer deck, turn 5 Sarah here, and that should be enough for us to win the right lane. I'm going to Shadow King his Symbiote here because it's just going to put it down to 0 power, and then a Maximus and Surfer on the middle lane should be a ton of power. I don't think he's going to be able to compete with that, especially with him losing 9 power unexpectedly. And his play is a Gigantic Hulk, which unfortunately for him is not going to be enough. And that's another victory. Hey guys, I really appreciate it if you made it this far into the video. I hope this deck helps you climb rank out there. I'm going to continue throwing out Marvel Snap content during this season. Guys, get you some good decks out there, some Conquest gameplay as well. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.